All of New York City knew that Tessa Van Doren, the heiress to the Van Doren fortune, had a golden boy she kept on a pedestal. He was her perfect man, untouchable like the star of some cheesy Netflix teen drama, flawless in every way. And then there was me. On the day of our engagement party, he stood before me in a bespoke suit, his face a mask of provocation. "Logan," he said, his voice dripping with condescension, "Tessa doesn't have you in her heart. At best, you're the other man." He leaned in closer. "So what if you marry her? Her heart will always belong to me." A slow smile spread across my face. I lifted my foot and drove it squarely into his prized jewels. "I'd advise you to think very carefully before you speak again." The party hadn't officially started, but the grand ballroom was already filled with the city's elite, the sons and daughters of titans and dynasties. Eyes darted between us, but no one dared to intervene. Everyone here knew the story. Tessa Van Doren and her beloved Julian Vance. He was the orphan the Van Dorens had adopted years ago in a public display of charity, the boy they'd polished into a prince, the one Tessa had inexplicably fallen for. My impending marriage to Tessa was nothing more than a merger, a consolidation of assets. I was a business deal. I couldn't possibly compare to the man who held her heart. The room was dead silent. Flanked by her entourage, Tessa glided forward, her expression impassive. Only when her eyes landed on Julian did they soften with warmth. When she turned back to me, her face was once again a mask of ice. "What are you doing just standing there?" she snapped. "We're about to begin." I let out a cold laugh, rolling my ankle as I walked toward Julian. "What was it you just said? Care to repeat it?" Julian scoffed and repeated his little speech, word for word. He wasn't even finished when my legs shot out. Thwack! I've been training in martial arts since I was a kid. My kicks packed a serious punch. This one, a kick that could end a family line, sent Julian flying backward with a strangled cry. I saw the color drain from his face as he soared through the air, a look of pure, life-altering shock in his eyes. He probably saw his great-grandmother beckoning him to the great beyond. He landed in a heap, curling into a fetal position, and the ridiculous sight of him writhing on the floor filled me with a deep sense of satisfaction. Tessa stood frozen, as if she couldn't process what had just happened. Her perfect man? Hilarious. I live for knocking perfect men off their pedestals. It took her a solid minute to react. When she finally did, she rushed to his side like a madwoman. "Julian, are you okay? Are you hurt?" "Dr. Finch, get over here and check on him." Dr. Finch, the Van Doren's private physician, was a man of considerable skill. Tessa spun on me, her eyes blazing. "You're insane. He says a few words to you, and you attack him? If anything happens to Julian, I will make you pay. He publicly disrespects me and tries to humiliate me with our affair, and I'm the problem?" After she finished her tirade, I smirked and slowly sauntered over to where Julian was clutching his groin. The moment he saw me approach, he started trembling. Dr. Finch finished his brief examination. "He'll be all right, Ms. Van Doren. No permanent damage. It wasn't a direct hit, but he has significant swelling at the top of his thigh, and the surrounding area is bruised from the impact. I'll prescribe something for the pain and a topical cream. He'll be fine in a few days." Julian let out a sigh of relief, then glared at me, though he wisely kept his mouth shut. I looked down at him, my smile cold. "Looks like my aim was off. You're a lucky man. Oh, by the way, you might not know this about me, but the people who know me have a nickname for me. They say I hit with surgical precision." Then I turned and jabbed a finger in Tessa's direction, my voice cutting through the silence. "I didn't sink $1 billion into your failing company just so you could slap this joke in my face. You tramp. You really know how to put on a show. It's disgusting. Absolutely fucking disgusting." I spat on the floor next to Julian's head. "If I don't get a satisfactory explanation today, you can consider this engagement off. Tessa, you think I'm actually interested in you? With the power of the Croft family, you think I have a shortage of women who want to be with me? With one word, I could have every socialite in this city lining up. They'd drown you in their contempt. If your father hadn't come to my office practically on his knees, begging me to save your family, you think you'd even be worthy of a merger with me? What a goddamn waste of my time." With that, I turned on my heel and swaggered out of the ballroom. I could faintly hear the sound of Tessa screaming in frustration, grabbing canapes from a nearby table and hurling them against the wall. My parents were in the VIP lounge, sipping tea. As I walked in, my mother spoke first. "That was quite a performance, son. You didn't embarrass the Croft name." I sneered, slumping onto the sofa and crossing my legs before lighting a cigarette. "I've been navigating the shark-infested waters of the business world for years. I'm no idiot. The Van Dorens let Julian confront me as a power play, a way to put me in my place right from the start. They were the number 2 family in New York City's old money hierarchy, a dynasty with a legacy. But in recent years, back-alley deals and corporate sabotage from rivals had gutted their profits. Van Doren Industries was bleeding out. To save their empire, they had no choice but to secure a merger through marriage. With my capital and proven success, I was their best and only option. They wanted my money, but their pride wouldn't let them bow their heads. They thought they could use their pedigree to lord over me, to make the Croft the junior partner who would just hand over the cash. Thinking about it made me laugh out loud. What fools! They thought Logan Croft was some pushover they could easily manipulate. Their perfect plan had just been shattered into a million pieces. I was raised by tough parents. They started with nothing, clawed their way up from the bottom, and dragged me through years of instability, of not knowing where our next meal would come from. But they survived. They made their first fortune in real estate, riding a market boom all the way to the top. And I didn't let them down. I worked my ass off, graduated at the top of my class, and carved out my own empire in the luxury hotel industry. Today, I own the majority of high-end hotels in the city. My father is a ruthless man. When he was young and just starting out, a dozen union guys tried to muscle in on his first construction site. They beat him bloody, but he put every single one of them in the hospital. I guess I inherited his disposition. Now, the Croft family is looking to expand, and this merger is our way in, but I will not be played. And as for that piece of work, Tessa Van Doren, I wouldn't touch her with a 10-foot pole. My assistant, who had been at the party, sent me a text. The patriarch, Mr. Van Doren, has arrived. Then my phone buzzed again. It was a message from Tessa's mother, Eleanor Van Doren, asking me to let the matter go, for her sake, and to proceed with the engagement ceremony. A smirk played on my lips. Persake? Who the hell are you? Your family's honor means less than nothing to me. You don't want to solve this properly? You won't swallow your pride? You want to just sweep it under the rug? You still don't understand your position, do you? In my world, debts are settled the same day. There are no extensions. Fine. If you want to play games, I'll play. I glanced at the time, made a quick phone call, then put my phone down and lit another cigarette. 5 minutes later, my phone, sitting on the table, rang. I smiled, let it ring for exactly 29 seconds, and then answered. Our suppliers are suddenly pulling their contracts. They said you're behind it. Tessa's voice was laced with disbelief. What do you think? I replied coolly. Tessa, I'm giving you 2 minutes. You and him, get over here and apologize. If you don't, the rest of your suppliers will follow suit. By tomorrow, Van Doren Industries will be paralyzed. And as for all the rivals who've been circling your company, I think you understand what I mean. I didn't wait for her reply. I hung up, starting the clock. At 1 minute and 50 seconds, I heard frantic footsteps outside the lounge. The door burst open. It was Tessa and Julian. I leaned back on the sofa, legs crossed, watching as Tessa and a pale, sweating Julian, still clutching his bruised ego, stood before me. Tessa waged a silent war with herself for a few moments before reluctantly stepping forward. As she lowered her head in submission, my gaze shifted to Julian. His face was as white as a sheet. I put on a fake smile. Julian, you're still young. I understand if you don't know how to speak properly. Don't worry, I continued. I'll teach you. I reached into my inner jacket pocket and pulled out a credit card. You've been the child Tessa has raised all these years. By that logic, I suppose that makes me your father. Call me Dad. Let me hear it. If I'm pleased, the $500,000 credit line on this card is yours. If I'm not, well, I can't guarantee my aim will be off next time. Julian's head snapped up, his teeth clenched. Logan Croft, don't you go too far. Tessa shouted. I blew a smoke ring in her direction. Did I say you could speak? I'm educating my son. What gave you the right to interrupt? Tessa was stunned into silence, her face flushing crimson. I turned my smiling gaze back to Julian. He gritted his teeth, his eyes filled with hatred, but he had no choice. He lowered his head. Dad, I burst out laughing. I flicked my wrist, slapping the card against his cheek. There's a good boy. Go on, take it. Have fun. I straightened my tie and turned to Tessa with a cheerful smile. Shall we go, Tessa? The engagement party concluded, and by the next morning, Logan Croft, was a legend in New York City. I had put the Van Dorens in their place on my own turf. Many were impressed. The Van Dorens had tried to execute a power play in front of the entire city, and I had turned it back on them spectacularly. That night, Tessa showed up at my penthouse, her face as dark as thunder. Logan Croft, let me tell you something. Even if we get married, you may have my body, but you will never, ever have my heart. I let out a cold, impatient laugh. Are you done? Did I say I wanted to sleep with you? Who gives a damn about your body? Just looking at you makes me sick. If you have nothing else to say, get out. The next morning, my driver picked me up. It was time to get back to work. Not long after, my assistant, Sarah, came into my office to inform me that Tessa Van Doren was here to see me. I gave her a nod. Tessa walked in and got straight to the point. That $1 billion. When are you transferring it? I had to laugh. We're not officially married yet, are we? I countered. Besides, I'm giving you a $1 billion capital injection. What is your family bringing to the table? Tessa's hands clenched into fists. The Van Doren Group is in some trouble right now, she muttered, her eyes on the floor. Our credit lines are frozen. We need your money to stay afloat. The dowry. There is no dowry. I'm sorry. I laughed out loud. If sorry could solve problems, there would be no problems in this world. A free ride? In your dreams. I leaned back on my office sofa, lit a cigarette, and smiled. You want my money? That's not impossible, but the Van Doren family needs to offer something in return. I want 30% of your company's stock, and I want my own people overseeing every single one of your major business divisions. Tessa exploded. Logan Croft, that's outrageous. Why don't you just rob us blind? You're not even human. Seeing her lose her temper, I slammed the book I was reading onto the coffee table. Crack. My eyes locked onto hers. Tessa, your family has some serious nerve. Do you think you would have survived this long without me? Your family contributes nothing. No money, no leverage, nothing. You say I'm not human? Let me tell you something. This is a goddamn business merger. If you want to cooperate, then cooperate properly. But if you think you're getting a free ride, you better think long and hard about the consequences. I stood up, towering over her. I advise you to reconsider your position. You don't want to live to regret this. I buzzed my assistant. Sarah, show Ms. Van Doren out. I'm not running a charity. In this world, you're nothing without money, and you're less than nothing without power. I have been working myself to the bone, pulling all-nighters to establish the Croft Group's presence in this city. The merger with the Van Dorens was a strategic move to gain access, channels, and resources. Now that my goal was within reach, it was time to rapidly expand our influence. After my little educational session with Tessa, the Croft Group's operations in New York proceeded smoothly. Seeing the Van Dorens' newfound sincerity, I, of course, had to uphold my end of the bargain. A deal's a deal, after all. Integrity is the price of admission. I gave the order to inject the first round of capital into their company. As a major shareholder, we were now in the same boat. But my investment came with strings attached. Business is business. I wasn't about to lose money. I had my legal team draw up a contract and send it over to Tessa. It stipulated that I was to receive 20% of their monthly profits. My assistant told me that when Tessa received the contract, she spent the entire day throwing things around her office. I couldn't care less. When Sarah brought the signed contract back, she looked worried. Mr. Croft, are we pushing them too hard? Is this too much? I looked over the contract with satisfaction and smiled. Sarah, this is how the world works. If I'm not ruthless, the Croft family becomes the Van Doren stepping stone. You'd do well to learn that. Under my strategy, the Van Doren Group began to stabilize. Tessa understood that her family was still on thin ice. She couldn't afford to alienate me. She still needed my money. The lights at their corporate headquarters burned late into the night. Every evening, Tessa returned home in the dead of night, exhausted. Some time passed. The wedding date was approaching, and by then, the Croft Group had established a solid foundation in New York. My assistant informed me that Julian Vance had graduated from college. I knew the Van Dorens would use this as an excuse to throw a massive party, a chance to invite the city's power players. I had a special gift prepared for Julian. At the party, I saw him preening, the triumphant joy in his eyes impossible to hide. A small smile touched my lips. Let my dear son have his moment in the sun. He wouldn't be staying with the Van Dorens for much longer anyway. I was dressed in a custom tuxedo, while Julian wore a tailored suit and a pair of ridiculously expensive glasses, trying to project an air of mature, obedient sophistication. Tessa gazed at him with an expression of pure adoration, but when her eyes fell on me, she frowned. I paid her no mind, pulling out a cigarette and lighting it. During the party, Tessa appeared on my arm as we made our entrance. People exchanged glances, but no one said a word. I knew they were used to seeing her with Julian. Seeing her with me was a change they weren't accustomed to. But their opinion of me was about to change. I put every bit of skill and social maneuvering I had learned over the years to use that night. After a few hours of conversation, the city's most influential players had done a complete 180. They were impressed. When I'd had enough, I stepped out onto a balcony for some fresh air and lit a cigarette. Suddenly, I overheard voices from a nearby group. I can't believe it, one man said. This Logan Croft has the Van Dorens completely under his thumb. Another chimed in. Yeah, the winds in this city are changing. It looks like we need to get on his good side before we're left out in the cold. My lips curved into a smile. My plan was working. After finishing my cigarette, I went back inside. Tessa was holding Julian's hand on a small stage. Her voice was soft as she looked at him. Today is an important milestone for our Julian. As he steps out into the world, I hope you will all look out for him. And I wish my dear Julian a future filled with happiness and success. With that, she presented him with a box. Inside were the deeds to 2 mansions. They were villas in the Hamptons, in a location so exclusive you couldn't buy your way in even if you had the money. Owning property, there was a symbol of ultimate status. The crowd began to murmur about how much the Van Dorens cherished Julian. They truly treat him as their own. Julian shot me a triumphant, challenging look. I remained perfectly impassive. He then turned to me, a fake smile plastered on his face. Dad, on such an important day, you didn't forget to give me a gift, did you? In front of all these people, all these titans of industry, it would be a dereliction of my fatherly duties not to give him something. A strange smile spread across my face. I signaled for Sarah to bring forth a large, elegant envelope. Inside was an offer letter for a highly coveted management position at a prestigious international firm's overseas branch. Anyone who went through their program was guaranteed a meteoric rise. Julian opened it with a look of disdain, but as he read the contents, his eyes widened in disbelief. I clapped him on the shoulder, my expression one of fatherly concern. I don't want you to struggle, son. So, I pulled a lot of strings to get you this rare opportunity. Don't you worry about a thing. I've already arranged for your smooth entry into the program. Just don't let my efforts go to waste. I wish you all the best. I've even arranged for people to take care of you over there. Make sure you study hard. After I finished, the way Julian looked at me had completely changed. He knew this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, a golden ticket. As much as Tessa mattered to him, establishing his own power was more important. And he knew this was a chance he could never get on his own. For the first time, Julian looked at me and, with genuine emotion, called me Dad. My smile only deepened. They say that prejudice is a mountain in a man's heart. Go, my son. Go to the place I've prepared for you. The people I've arranged to take care of you are some of the most notorious fixers in the local underworld. I guarantee you, after they're done with you, you'll be a changed man. By the time you come back, your personality will have been thoroughly adjusted, and your feelings for Tessa will be nothing but pure disgust. The clueless boy kept thanking me profusely. The atmosphere at the party was jovial, but Tessa and the rest of the Van Dorn family were not pleased. I glanced at them, but didn't engage. I knew they were up to no good. They wanted to keep Julian in New York as a thorn in my side, a constant distraction. I would never give them that chance. And who was I to stand in the way of a young man's ambition? An opportunity this good was impossible to refuse, especially coming from his dear old dad. Julian was ecstatic, completely unaware that he had just fallen into the transformation program I had so carefully designed for him. Not long after, Tessa and I were married. The wedding was flawless and elegant. I was now officially the Van Dorn son-in-law. After the wedding, I ignored her and threw myself into my work. Julian packed his bags and left for his new life abroad. Word came back from my contacts overseas. On his first night, Julian was reportedly entertained by a dozen burly men. He couldn't get out of bed the next day. One evening, I was having dinner with several suppliers at a private club. We went back and forth, and after several rounds of negotiation, I maximized my leverage and secured what I needed at the lowest possible price. A middle-aged man raised his glass, a wry smile on his face. Mr. Croft, doing business with a mind like yours is truly humbling. I beamed, clinking my glass against his. You flatter me, Mr. Harrison. You're the real genius here. After everything was settled, I headed home. Just as I was about to open the door to my apartment, a voice called out from behind me. Mr. Croft. I turned. A woman in a form-fitting sheath dress emerged from the shadows. It was Veronica Van Doren, Tessa's younger sister. She walked calmly toward me. I was wondering if Mr. Croft might have a few minutes to talk, perhaps over a drink. I frowned for a moment, then nodded, giving her the chance. We went to the private room of a quiet bar. Veronica took out her phone and played an audio file. I heard two familiar voices. It was a conversation between Tessa and her mother, Eleanor. Eleanor's voice was stripped of all its high society pretense, leaving only venom. Tessa, we can't let this continue. If this goes on, the Van Dorn group will become the Croft group. What? Are you getting scared now? Tessa's voice was tight with anger. Mom, what should I do? I'll do whatever you say. Eleanor let out a cold, sharp laugh. He's just one man. He can't fend off an army. Remember the Winstons? Their family was more powerful than the Crofts are now. And what happened to them? Their fortune became ours. Her voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper. He doesn't want to give us the rest of the money? Fine. Kill him. If that's too difficult, kill his parents. With the head of the family gone, his money will be ours for the taking. I know you can do it, darling. Hearing this, I froze. I took a long drag from my cigarette. So, it seemed no one in the Van Dorn family was clean. Veronica turned off the recording. Mr. Croft, she said, her voice even. Did you hear all that? Veronica, the younger daughter, had been an outcast her whole life. Tessa had bullied her relentlessly, framed her for everything from minor infractions to losing important company documents, an accusation that had earned her a beating that almost killed her. But her will was made of steel. She survived 3 years of torment within the family, went abroad for college and to gain experience, and returned to ostensibly work under Tessa, biding her time. I blew out a cloud of smoke and looked at her. Selling out your family like this, Ms. Van Doren. What's your angle? Veronica smiled, a sharp, predatory expression. She got straight to the point. I want everything. The entire Van Doren empire. Work with me, she said, and when this is over, I'll ensure the Croft family can do whatever it wants in New York. I sized her up, then reached out and shook her hand. Deal. I could agree so quickly because I had already done my homework. Veronica's upbringing had forged her ambition and her desire for revenge. The years of injustice had killed any love she had for her family, and seeing Tessa in the CEO's chair had long been a source of bitter resentment. Our family's arrival in New York was the opportunity she had been waiting for. She was a woman who knew what she wanted. Even after striking a deal with Veronica, I didn't make any sudden moves. I continued my daily routine, office, home, rinse, repeat, showing no sign that anything was amiss. As my business interests spread throughout the city, I began to increase the pressure, raising the profit percentage I demanded from the Van Dorns until it hit 50%. They couldn't take it anymore. The day after I collected my payment and left, Eleanor exploded in the middle of a board meeting. In front of all the shareholders, she swept a pile of documents off the table and screamed, "Useless! A bunch of useless trash," before storming out. I felt a surge of satisfaction as Veronica recounted the scene to me. She told me she had her own people cultivated within the company over the years, moles who would report any unusual activity directly to me. I immediately beefed up security in my residence and my parents' home. If that old witch couldn't get to me, she'd undoubtedly go after my family. But then I considered that a cornered animal is the most dangerous. In the end, I decided it was best to get them out of the city altogether. I arranged for my parents to leave New York quietly, with the promise that they could return once everything was settled. As they were leaving, my mother was fraught with worry, telling me over and over to be careful. I hugged them both and told them not to worry. Once I saw their plane take off, I could finally breathe a sigh of relief. With no more vulnerabilities, I was ready for the Van Dorens to make their move. There are many ways to make a person disappear from this world. An accidental death, most likely a car crash, is the simplest. By now, everyone in New York knew my face. They couldn't make a move in broad daylight. It had to be done in the shadows. But with my company expanding at its current rate, the Croft Group was like a black hole, devouring everything in its path. Every day, the Van Dorns waited. Another piece of their market share was consumed by me. Logically, they would have to strike at the right time, with the right reason, and at the right place to create an accident that couldn't be traced back to them. After all, who would suspect the loving Van Doren family of murdering their own son-in-law? Veronica had told me that she had personally witnessed them plotting the demise of another wealthy family years ago, seizing their assets in the aftermath. It seemed they were planning to use the same playbook on me. I scoffed. I wasn't just some rich kid they could eliminate. One day, the call finally came from Veronica. Eleanor's making her move. A slow grin spread across my face. She's finally showing her hand. The day has come. The occasion was the completion of a major Van Dorn construction project. A site inspection was required, and they specifically requested my presence. As the company's general manager, Tessa would naturally be there to personally oversee the final review. The moment I heard the news, I knew this wasn't about inspecting a building. It was about inspecting my corpse. Since the wedding, I rarely rode in the same car as Tessa. The sight of her made me nauseous, and today was no exception. Just as we were about to leave, my phone rang. It was Sarah. Her voice was frantic. I told her to calm down and explain. She said the CEO of a company involved in a massive new project was at our office, furious, and had declared that if I didn't show up today, the deal was off forever. After the call, I told Tessa I had to handle an emergency and that she should go on ahead. I would follow as soon as I was done. She shot me an irritated look and left. When Tessa got in her car, the air conditioning mysteriously failed. In her current paranoid state, guilt does that to a person. She took it as a sign from her mother. She immediately switched to the car I normally used. 5 minutes after she left, my assistant picked me up in a different vehicle, and we headed to the office. The problem at the office was real, but not nearly as urgent as I'd made it seem. It was all part of the plan. An hour later, I received a call from the police. They told me my wife had been in a severe car accident. The car had been hit with such force that she was thrown from the vehicle, her body striking the curb before rolling into the street. Before anyone could react, an oncoming semi-truck had run her over. She was now in the intensive care unit. They told me to get to the hospital immediately. I put on the performance of a lifetime. I feigned shock, my voice trembling, barely coherent with grief. The officer on the other end tried to console me. I rushed to the hospital like a man possessed, fell to my knees in front of the emergency room, and begged the doctors to do everything in their power, telling them money was no object. When I arrived, Eleanor was already there, pacing outside the ICU. The moment she saw me, her eyes filled with hate. She marched up and slapped me across the face. "Logan Croft, you killed my baby girl. You monster." I said nothing. The hospital was full of eyes and ears. Eleanor grew more hysterical, beating her fists against my chest. "My beautiful daughter, how can I go on living?" My assistant had security pull her away, his face a stony mask. "Your daughter was in a car accident, Mrs. Van Doren. Mr. Croft is just as devastated as you are. But do not slander him. Mr. Croft has been in his office all afternoon. How could he possibly have harmed your daughter? Don't just sling your crap everywhere." I shot him a look. Crap? My assistant realized his mistake and quickly fell silent. Just then, a figure appeared at the end of the hallway. It was Veronica. Her slender waist moved with a graceful sway, a captivating rhythm that drew the eye. "Mother," Veronica said calmly, "you should be with Tessa right now. I'm sure she needs you." Her words sent Eleanor into a rage. She spun around and struck Veronica across the face. The slap echoed through the quiet corridor. Veronica clutched her cheek, saying nothing. Eleanor sneered. "Now that your sister is dying, you must be thrilled, aren't you? I'm telling you, you little jinx, if anything happens to your sister, your life won't be worth living." She spat on the floor in front of us and stormed off. Veronica and I stood in silence outside the operating room. The hospital corridor was eerily quiet, but I could see the bloodshot veins in Veronica's eyes. She wiped a trickle of blood from the corner of her mouth, and I could feel the hatred radiating from her. Her placid exterior was a lie. This woman was no victim. I knew then that women like Veronica were vipers. To endure a lifetime of abuse, to wait for the perfect moment to strike a single, fatal blow. That kind of patience was terrifying. With those injuries, run over by a semi-truck, not even the greatest surgeon in the world could have saved her. After a full day and night of surgery, Tessa Van Doren was pronounced dead. When Eleanor heard the news, she collapsed on the spot. Tessa's father, who was already in poor health, couldn't handle the shock and died of a heart attack. Eleanor was rushed to the ER. I was actually relieved they were able to revive her. I was worried she wouldn't live to face justice. While Eleanor was recovering, the police arrived at the hospital with a few low-level thugs and their signed confessions. They had come to arrest their suspect. When the hired goons found out they'd killed the wrong person, they were terrified. They knew that even if they took the fall, Eleanor would never pay them. In fact, with the Van Doren's power, she'd likely have them killed in prison. When Eleanor had hired these thugs, she'd promised them a fortune if they killed me. Enough money and women to set them up for life. But they had failed. They had killed the apple of the Van Doren family's eye, Eleanor's most beloved daughter. To reduce their own sentences, they cracked under the slightest pressure from the police, confessing everything. They identified Eleanor Van Doren as the one who hired them. Armed with their testimony, the police arrested the matriarch of the Van Doren family right in her hospital bed. Eleanor tried to use her status